All right, so let's just get right down to the nitty gritty. Sean's got a bone to pick with me, of course, and I saw him going just crazy on Twitter, and I reached out. I was like, hey, man, I know we were supposed to have you on a couple weeks back, but let's get you on now so you can go ahead and just thrash the Thomson. Let's go, buddy.
Hey, Sean.
Hey.
Sean, look at it this way. You're not alone, dude.
Listen,
I was like, bro, if you got something to say, come on.
The
say
list
it to me.
is
Say it
long
to me.
and distinguished.
Oh, man. You're not the only one, my brother.
so for me, like, I was just like, because I know how it came off. Like, people were probably like, damn, like, Sean's definitely getting tired. But I, like, it just hurt it hurt my insides because I do so much more training, like so many extra rounds, like so much, like I've ran 3 or 4 times this week and I just fought. Like I do so much extra stuff. But when he hit me with like a good cross and it didn't even hurt, but my nose, like immediately I took him down and then I was on his back, like I had a body lock. And all the blood started to pour out of my mouth. And I was like, holy shit, like, this is pretty bad. And then I was in my corner and I was just like, I couldn't breathe out of my nose because my nose was broke. And my nose has been broken multiple times. So it's crappy anyway. I couldn't breathe out of my nose and I was just inhaling blood. I'm like, this is not going to be a fun 2 rounds. So everything, like, I'm like, listen, like my corner, in my mind, like they were calling stuff. And I just couldn't do it. Like my nose was I was just more like, I need to get a hold of him and just control this fight and make it to a decision. And that's kind of what I had. That's kind of what I did.
Yeah, there are.
All right, so
there's
wait,
all
so he's mad at me though.
Go ahead.
John, he's mad at me. But why are you mad at me? I didn't.
Because you said
Why you
that
mad at
I was
me?
gassing, and I had to make sure that the reason I was gassing was because I physically couldn't breathe.
That doesn't sound like an excuse to me. What are you talking about? I didn't do anything wrong. No.
I don't think a lot of people knew that my nose was broke, how bad it was, and so like people were probably damn like, oh, Sean's getting tired. Like, no, Sean can't breathe. So I was getting tired because I physically couldn't breathe. So I just had to make that clear.
Well, let's talk about that situation because this happens in fighting and it happens in all kinds of ways when we'll have someone that we know how hard they train. We know that they're in condition, but all of a sudden you see them start to, as I say, they kind of start to fall off of the cliff.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what you're saying is when you get your nose broken and it's broken bad and you start to aspirate blood, that blood, the little particles, when you're breathing in, because you're sucking in air, with a lot of velocity through your mouth to, fill your lungs. Mm-hmm. Well, that blood starts to actually, little tiny droplets go down into your lungs and they start to actually, decrease your lungs' ability to disperse that oxygen through your muscles. And you do get tired. And it's not because you're not in shape. It's because of something that's happened in the fight. Have you ever had to deal with anything like that in your career so far?
So the only other injury I've ever had in a fight was my Christian Aguilera fight when I caught him with that guillotine. Yeah. He hit me with a good leg kick, and I actually had a fracture in my what's the smaller bone in the bottom of your shin?
Your tibia.
I had a fracture on the side, so I didn't. After the fight, I was walking around like I thought my calf was just sore from getting kicked. Turns out I went and I got an x-ray. I had a fracture, but I knew going into the second round, you could see he kicked me. I caught it and I took him down, and that's when I got the finish. But I knew that there was something wrong with my leg. So that's kind of like the only other scenario I can think of. Like, but this was definitely like physically not being able to breathe. I've never had to deal with anything like that. And Josh, you fought, and John, you've been in there a million times. Fighting and training
totally different.
Are 2 completely different things. You can go for 15 rounds in the gym, and then in a fight, 2 rounds in, your forearms are blown up. You have arm pump, you can't breathe. So it's just completely different in there. And then to add on, like you like about not being able to breathe, that was the hardest thing. And I just knew in that situation, like I had to adjust. And in the second round, I had his back the entire rest of the round. Once I got him down, I'm like, I can't lit him up, So I had to make some big adjustments.
Yeah, Sean, we'll talk about that. Like in terms of there's nothing you can do in training that will simulate a fight. You just can't go that
Nothing.
hard in training because otherwise you're trying to hurt your training partners. Then you won't have any. That's
Yeah.
one. Two is it just doesn't. The emotions are not there. The adrenaline dump is not there. All of those things that you get from a real fight, you can't mimic in training. I mean, unless you were to say like, hey, whoever your biggest and toughest fighter is in your gym and you have to spar with that guy every single time, there's a little bit of fear that goes along with sparring with them as your teammate, but still it's like, oh shit.
But it's still
the same.
It still doesn't compare, you know. Even because there's days like on sparring day, like when I know I'm getting ready to spar with someone who's really good, like I'll get butterflies, and I like that, you know. But there's still like the timing when you're fighting in like an actual fight, everything like slows down. It's so hard to. It's literally. I wish I could like put it in a bottle and like sell it, like for the feeling of what it is, because you can't explain it to somebody. Like even people who train, unless you fight and you get in there and you know, it's too hard to explain.
Yeah,
to people.
you have. It really is like you hit the nail on the head with everything kind of slows down. Is that you get in there and you're like, it's a blur for the first probably, I don't know, a minute or two. You're like, God, am I really in here? Is this really happening? Like, especially if something goes bad in the first minute and a half, like if you're stuck in a guillotine or something, you're like, shit, how'd I end up here? What just happened? You're thinking to yourself, how did this all go down? But all the nerves and the energy that go along with those moments, that's what helps blow you out. Like your forearms, your shoulders, your back, everything. When you get to a position like where you said you're able to get the body lock, if you go back like with my fight with Benson Henderson in that first round, I got the body lock right away. I was like, just control, just slow it down, bring the pace down, you know, get your wits about you, understand what's going on. That's where you kind of realize like, shit, this is not good. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to control this position and get to the end part of the round. And then, you know, you have longer to go, so you don't want to blow anything out.
Yeah.
Look, I say things on here because I know exactly what goes through your mind. I didn't know that your nose was broken.
Yeah.
I know that you're someone that trains really hard. I've talked to a couple people out your way. They know how you train. They know that you're always in shape. But I did say this though, is that whether you're in shape or not, the adrenaline and everything that comes along with the fight, it just can't be mimicked. And so that pressure, like you said in the post-fight interview, that's what I was talking about. All the press for the week, getting in the cage. That's the first time you had to deal with anything like that. And that could have got to you as well. And that's what I was going based off of. Am I wrong?
Yeah. I know. It was a lot. It was like, after I beat Jake Matthews, we were trying to they just ranked me. I was like 14. I was literally begging for a fight. I went to fight in June and literally nobody. And I said every single name in the top 15. I was like, listen, I'll fight any of these guys. And they're like, all right, well, this guy's not. Robbie was still ranked. They're like, we're not giving you Robbie. I was asking for the Leech. They're like, the Leech isn't answering his phone. I was asking for everybody, and they literally wouldn't, like, no one would say yes. So finally, they offered Kevin Lee for the July 10th card. So me and my coaches were like, you know what? Fuck it. He's a big name. He's ranked at 155. He's coming up. We'll take that. 2 weeks before that fight, he gets a rib injury. We reschedule for August 28th. Then I get this horrible staph infection. Now I go to the hospital. I think I'm just going to go into the hospital, get an IV, and come out in like a day, and I'll be fine. Like I told USADA, like, hey, I got to go get an IV. Like we were good. And 3 days later, my foot wasn't getting better. They did surgery the next day. And then I had an IV pick line in my arm for a month afterwards. I wasn't allowed to sweat. I had Rogue Airdynes in my basement. When my fiance was at work, I was just down there crushing workouts. But I couldn't do anything for literally a month. And then they called me 12 weeks out, and I literally still wasn't training yet. And they're like, hey, Michael Chiesa on they offered an earlier date. I'm like, I told my manager, I'm like, if you can get November 20th, like that'll give me 2 weeks to ease my way back into training. I'll be 10 weeks out. I'll have another 2 weeks to kind of like start ramping it up, and then I'll be 8 weeks out and I'll be good. So I literally got the call, and I wasn't even back to training yet, but I knew it was such a big opportunity that I couldn't say no. So 2 canceled fights, not fighting for 8 months, and an injury. It was a lot, you know. And then that week I was the co-main event. So like you said, they gave me a lot more. I just had a lot more. I had a lot more eyes on
More
me.
pressure.
So it was definitely a lot of pressure, and yeah, man, it'll wear you out. But I'm happy with the way I dealt with it all.
100% agree. Okay.